right, does everyone see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Now, what is my purpose? Is coming from a series, it's a book called Strength Finders 2.0 from Tom Rath. And this is, I know I urge everyone to be able to look at that and go through it for themselves. And what is good is because one of the things that we spend a lot of times in is trying to find out, you know, what makes us happy while we're working in industry, business, things like that. Um, and one of the things that we want to make sure we can kind of do is get an understanding of what is our strengths and things that we are typically able to do. And because if you find that, then it's something that will be able to work with you so that it doesn't make it as much as work or effort as far as finding pleasure out of life or anything we actually try to do. I think most times we try to do things that are contrary to who we are, and that is where we get stress, anxiety, and things like that. And as we had gone over the sessions, we talked about how anxiety, stress, and how our body reacts and how those things can affect us negatively. So this is something that I think it would be good for us to be able to understand as we go through it. The other is this is a book I wrote a couple years ago, and this was my personal journey in understanding, uh, especially as a business type person. I always thought that when I was taught and raised that through all my education, business is separate from personal. You got to go out there, get money, get all these different things to make you happy. But the one thing I realized was that after trying to do all these different things and running companies and things like that, I realized that if you can find within yourself of what your purpose to do, find pleasure in it and you'll be at peace. That deals with stress, that deals with perspective of life and things like that. So even though I talk about the fact that it's about obtaining wealth and things that are necessary to it, it's more so of a personal journey of growth and understanding these steps. And these things is what I've come out with my personal development over the last several months. So I'll make reference to that. So why is understanding purpose important? Well, you know, after several years of seminars, education, and one of the best schools to attend called life, I believe I've begun to understand why the understanding of purpose is important. And there's a formula in as we study in some of the things about personalities in some earlier sessions, we get to learn ourselves. And you know, the way that I'm kind of wired is from a very conceptual type of perspective. So I kind of put life into that lens. But many of us look at it and say, okay, we want to chase wealth. We want to go after wealth and we want to make sure that we get everything we can get out of it. Well, what do you define wealth as? Some think it's money. Some think it's status. And we talk about that because there's a section that we talked about in personal development that I will keep referring to as we get into the business session starting in April, is that there's a difference between a wealth mind and an income mind. And I used to explain that a lot with, for instance, if you follow sports and you can look at a sports team, you have the players and think about it, Dallas Cowboys just hired or signed Dak Prescott after 2 years of negotiating his contract, and he's getting like $40 million a year for the next 4 years or so. Well, he's like, wow, $40 million a year. That is wealthy. But if you think of the perspective, Jerry Jones, who owns the team, is worth a couple billion. So even though Dak Prescott is getting 40 something $million a year, Jerry Jones, the owner, has more wealth than Prescott. And in fact, Dak has to get out on the field to earn his money, whereas Jerry Jones is sitting in the booth. So there's a difference when you look at wealth and income. Wealth is the ability to get inputs of revenue and services and money without you having to actually do it. That's where stocks and investments, real estate property, where you can get rental income or you get dividends, that's wealth. A lot of people especially in the United States, have an income mindset. I got to go out there and work it myself, go out and do it. Got to get out there and do it. And so if you stop doing it, then that flow of inflow stops. So there's a difference. But I even expanded that beyond that. And that's where my book is Kingdom Economics gets into, is that wealth to me is the passion that you have in your heart and the drive, plus power, which is the ability to do it, and then the purpose that you are here for. So if you combine your passion with your ability to do and the fact of what your purpose to do, that is going to get you wealth as far as peace internal and be able to have it outside as you continue to do things in life. So that's the scope of how I'm looking at as far as dealing with wealth. And this is why understanding your purpose is going to be important, because purpose will give us a better direction in making decisions. I mean, a lot of people always talk about, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that. And they struggle in life. Okay, I'm going to go through university. I'm going to go through school. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to get to this job. I'm going to get this job. And then there's so much unhappiness that's there. And if we get to an understanding of what we're to be and what we're to do, then it's not to say that you're not going to have down times or not being frustrated, but at the same time, that passion will be able to override those times that you're down. And then you don't know the things in life that you go on that get you into place and position to be able to do something. And for me to be able to have done what I was able to do, run companies and be here to even just talk about this, it was a 30-year journey of going through. When I went to Africa and I did seminars there, that was something that was new to me. Never did. And I was able to utilize that and see that aspect. When I had to go to different countries or different places or different jobs and things I didn't know, that expanded me. So the hope is that as you allow your passion and listen to, you're able to expand yourself out to really find that place, and that you find that place where you can be at peace internally. Let's go to the book from Tom Ralph. In the book, he talks about many things that are characteristics of, strengths. And before we get into these, I want to just rehash some things that we had done in a couple of sessions before. There was a session that we talked about, personalities. Who am I? And that's going to come into play here. Well, we talking about, I don't know if, you've heard of like all these different personality tests that are out there. You got Myers-Briggs, DISC, Predictive Index. There's some others like Discovery Insights that came out of Canada. All of them kind of do basically the same thing. They take, you answer different questions multiple times, and they basically get a pattern of what type of person you are. And that's important for you to understand that and know that, because who you are, and this doesn't make it right or wrong. It makes it who you are. Because who you are is basically kind of giving you a hint of purpose. There are people who are great, people who love, that are actors that can be able to turn it on and be able to get into character. That's, and that's typical of a certain personality type. Under DISC, that would be like a D, high dominant, or I, very out there going, charismatic type of thing. Someone that can kind of pull people in. Politicians are that way. So who you are is basically a scope, a microscope into the purpose that you're being able to do. And so that's why I spent the first sessions, even though we're talking about business development and growing businesses, I spent the first 9 months in understanding who we are. Because once we understand who we are, we can be able to maximize that into developing what we want to do in business and continue to grow in that. Um, so you have to reflect back. And I'm going to open it up just, for those, because I want to make sure we step back, because we have to look at the personality, and then we're going to look at a little bit of emotional intelligence, and then we'll get into these themes about how they work. But um, if anyone remembered anything about, their DISC test that they took, if you want to share with that, if you can just recall that as far as what it was saying about you, if you feel comfortable about sharing, won't you do that at this time?
I'll do mine. This is Chanel.
Okay.
Um, I actually have one that was in front of me that I did before. And it's pretty much the same. It's that I'm really task focused, um, authoritative, direct, driven. Communication is direct. Um, I had more of the dominant, the D.
D. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. For those that weren't be able to understand from the DISC is a personality that's kind of common. It's free out there. You can even Google it, and you can even take a DISC test that's out there on the internet. And basically it has D as dominance, I as kind of like, something that's inspirational. S is someone that's basically steady, and then C is conceptual. So those are like the 4 characteristics of a person. And Myers-Briggs talks about the same thing, like quadrants 1, 2, 3, 4, those type of things. Predictive index talks about almost the same thing. So basically, it kind of breaks you down to: are you, very dominant in control? Are you inspirational? Are you encouraging other folks? Are you steady, consistent, constant? Or are you conceptual, analytical type? So those are basically the kind of personality types of most people. And so based upon how you score, it says what you're more inclined to. Typically, if you're like a engineer, and you're more on the, under the DISC as a C, meaning that you're conceptual. You like to measure, analyze, go through these different things so that you can get an understanding of things. So you're much more less to take risk, but at the same time, once again, it's not good or bad. It just goes back to who you are basically as an individual. So you knowing these things about yourself is important, because it helps slot you into when you want to do things outwardly. So, going back and understanding that DISC is very important, or your personalities, because, when I used to do that, even for, my agency that I used to run, when we would do that, people would say, "Oh no, that's just, malarkey. That's just all, stuff is not really accurate." But once everyone would take it, they would say, "You know what? It is kind of fairly accurate." And and it's not to say it's right or wrong. It's about who you are and what you lean to. Now, typically, as you experience life events, you do change. And it's like if you get married, have a child, experience divorce, hardship, loss of one, you do have that impact on your personality. And that's why I said this, sometimes it's a journey. As you go through and do different things in life, you change. And that is where sometimes you look at, it's okay then to change some of the things that you want to do, whether it be work or life choices, because you have changed. And we don't want to necessarily say we have to be stuck. At the same time, we don't want to have other people say that they be stuck in who they are, because we want to give time for people to grow and expand as you open yourself up. So understanding who you are is very key. Now, the sister to that, of understanding who you are as far as personality, is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the ability to be able to be open for others, to be able to see how others see you. It's going outside of yourself and saying, okay, this is how I think I am, but how do people really see me? And that takes some sensitivity in order for you to do that. And some people score high and some people score low. And And there is, so we had looked at Emotional Intelligence 2.0. That's a book out there that you can look at. And that was part of what we were looking at to be able to examine. But one of the key things that's interesting, and that's why it ties back down to Strength Finders, is that I'll ask this out, and you'll see a pattern. Who wants to respond to say, okay, if you can list what are your 3 top strengths that you feel that you have of yourself? Let's open that up.
I would say for me, this is Ernestine. My top strengths is support, encouragement, and humor.
Okay. Support, encouragement, and humor. Okay. All right. Let me ask you something then. Okay. Those are your top: support, encouragement, and humor.
Mm-hmm.
What are the top 3 things that get on your last nerve?
Oh my gosh, liars.
Liars. Okay.
Liars do. People that don't put forth a full effort, like they give 1% versus 100. Also people that are somewhat lazy. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah.
Okay.
Won't you name that again?
Okay. But I said liars, people that don't put forth a full effort.
Okay.
And what was the other one? I forgot the third one that I said.
That's why I was trying to write those down again.
Did anybody catch it? Oh, lazy people.
Yeah.
My daughter heard me. Lazy people. Yeah.
They don't give forth effort and lazy. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, give forth effort. Okay. Now, one of the things, and then what were your strengths again? You said encouragement.
Oh, encouragement. I'm not sure if I said good listener or not. I'm going off the top of my head again. But an encourager, good listener, and humor.
And humor. Okay. Okay, encouragement, listener, humor. All right. Lazy, liars, and not good effort as things that kind of bother you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do you need? Why do you think that why do you think a strength is encouragement? What does it take to be a good encourager?
Well, someone that does listen, someone that does care, somebody that's willing to offer some type of advice to help.
Okay.
Hospitality, I guess.
All right. And what does it take to encourage someone?
To encourage someone is just to build them up, versus tearing them down, just to build them up and try to help them to see things in a lighter aspect versus the negativity that they may be looking at.
So in order for that to take place, there has to be commitment.
Communication. Yeah.
There has to be commitment. There has to be some hard work to that. There has to be some diligence and stick-to-itiveness.
Yeah.
Okay. The thing that I want, that the crux of emotional intelligence, if for those who hadn't heard of this concept before, is this: your strengths are also your areas of weakness. Your strengths are your area of weakness. And what do I mean by that? The things that you are strong in is the areas that you're so much more focused and sensitive to, that if those things aren't being upheld, it irritates you. So it's interesting to that. Like, for instance, if you're willing to commit and put hard work to you, lazy people get on your nerves. and so that's something we have to understand. And the reason why that is because we're more apt and skilled in doing that. So the things that are strengths to you are the things that you are more confident in, the things that you're more focused about, It's kind of like you're driving you know, when you get a new car, you see that new car everywhere you go the first couple weeks that you're driving it, because you might not have never seen a Nissan Rogue before, but when you bought one and you're driving, you're like, oh, there's a Nissan Rogue, there's a Nissan Rogue, because it's much more upfront. It's the same thing as your strengths. You know, when you're so much stronger in certain things, you're much more aware of it. It's so much easier for you. And then for those who have issues or trouble with that, that's where you struggle at. And that's where you struggle with. And so it's like, that's the crux of emotional intelligence. Because what emotional intelligence is letting us know is that you have to be aware that because you are who you are, all of us, we are more inclined to see with our own lens life. So, you know, so we have to be able to step out of ourselves and be able to be open and honest to see how people see us, you know, and not just through our own lens. And that's the difficulty. So it takes so much more sympathy and being able to connect in order to have that emotional intelligence. And why is that important? Because if you're trying to reach somebody, you have to be able to reach them through who they are. Just like you have strengths, other folks have strengths themselves. And so therefore, if it's going to be better means of communication, then you're going to have to be able to go ahead and connect to people on their level, not necessarily on your level. And so that's why emotional intelligence is so important. And that's why I wanted to talk about the personality and talk about emotional intelligence and revisit that a little bit before we get into these things, because we're talking about strength finders now, you know, and strength finders is to lead and give us a guide to our purpose. But if we don't understand that, then we are going to be able to start getting irritated with other folks, or not being able to be open to see that the strength that we come up with doesn't mean that we're better than others. It just means this is who we are and what we are more inclined to be able to do much more effectively. And that gives us an idea of what we can do in this world to be able to be at peace with our own self. Any questions or comments on that before we get into the strength finders, factors? Okay. Strength finders. This was it's an interesting book theme. What I have listed here is basically all the different particular categories of strengths that Tom Rath he talks about. I'm not going to go over every last one of them because it's, you know, is for time constraints. But what I do want to do is, if just ask if anyone had taken the test, and the test will give you your top 5. We can, you know, I would be interested in hearing, you know, what were your top 5 strengths, and what did you think about that, you know, as far as that as being reflective of yourself? Did you agree, disagree, or what did you find interesting?
This is LaShawn. I can share mine.
Okay.
My top 5 was restorative, belief, learner, positivity, and input.
Okay.
I definitely agree with all of them. So for belief, it was talking about like, in order for me to do something, it has to be like something that I believe in. Like, it has to align with what I want to do, what my purpose is in life. So I think that's so true, because like in regards to work, like I can't work a job if it's not aligned to my purpose and my calling.
Mm-hmm.
Restorative, I can't really remember what it was saying about that. I think it was saying something about like, if something's wrong, you like to fix it and put it back together or something like that.
Yeah, you're a fixer. Yep.
Yeah. So that's definitely true. Learner, of course, I'm always looking for new ways of, how I can learn, enhance my, you know, my personal development and professional. So I believe that was true too. Positivity, it was talking about like how I'm pretty much the light in the room.
Okay.
And I think it was talk about enthusiasm.
Yep.
And then for input, I totally agree. But maybe you could elaborate on this a little more. So it was talking about how I'm inquisitive and I like to ask a lot of questions. And it was saying that, like, even if you're asking questions in a moment, the answer, you like to store up information in your mind. So at a later date, you can pull from it or something like that.
Yep.
And that's totally true. And I realized when I did take this test, like, oh, well, this is a strength, but people will view that to me as a negative because I like to ask a lot of questions.
That is good. You nailed those down. That is it's so true. And this is why I always stress about dealing with who we are. It's not right or wrong, but and that's the same way we have to look at others. It's based upon, what you're much more skilled at. And what's key about these things, and you hit them, like you said, belief. It's very important. Um, if you're a person that is really belief based as far as a strength, you're right. You're going to get energy from working in things that you believe. So advocacy, nonprofit, um, things that organizations or companies that you have a internal personal belief in is going to be good for you. Because if you don't, then here's the thing too, and that when we deal with in business a lot, we hear about burnout. We hear that a lot. Oh, I get burnout, burnout, burnout. In fact, when you do the predictive index test, it will tell you it will indicate whether or not you're approaching burnout. There's a part of the test that in an indicator that shows that. And what that's saying is about energy. It goes back to, once again, the belief system. And it also goes back to passion. I refer to that as passion. When you say you're burning out, or you hear people saying they're burning out, they're basically doing things beyond what it's in them to do naturally. So they have to artificially, because then when we look at behavior, we can modify our behavior for a period of time, but it's not sustainable because eventually you're going to go back to your internal who you are. So, so that's why it's important to find and be connected to your strengths and then get into purpose, because you'll be able to continue that through a much more longer period of time, and that you're not thinking about, oh, I'm too tired, I can't get out, I can't do this anymore. Typically, when you go in burnout, that means you exhausted your ability to manipulate your behavior, and you can't take it anymore. And so I know with me, if I get to a point where I get that it's just I'm manipulating my behavior beyond who I think I am, then I get frustrated. I'll get angry because I just get irritated. And those are different signs, what we call burnout. And so that's why it's important understanding these things. So if you have a belief system, you want to make sure that you work and you're participating with things you believe. Now, LaShawn, what are, as we go through these different themes, it talks about a couple questions. Once is awareness of your strengths. That's what we just went through. The other thing that Tom goes into then he talks about is, what are ideas for action? I mean, so now that you have identified your strengths, what do you do with that? A good example would be if you have a belief insight as a strength, you can't be fulfilled, kind of working with a company that just produces widgets. All you're doing is just making products or things like that you don't have a connection to. Yeah, you can go in and you can work that job and that becomes a 9-to-5 job, but it doesn't become something that is passionate for you to be part of. So that's why having a belief in an insight, being aware of it's important. So what do you do then if you have a belief insight, but you're at a place that you're not necessarily able to express that? Well, there's different ways you can handle that. You can, you can volunteer at a nonprofit, because nonprofits for the most part are mission based in different areas, whether for whatever theme that you're looking at. So you could volunteer, you could join the board so you can promote change. There are other things and other ways you can be able to express that. And so that's a way that you can deal with burnout or frustration if you're in a particular area that you are not able to express your own personal strength. You can find avenues for that to be able to, because the key is to be able to do that. Because once you are able to express what's in you, that feeds that energy. Energy begets energy. So if you feel you're in a place where you can't, you need to find something, outlet that you can to restore that. And that's how you get that balance in life. LaShawn, you said that you had restorative as another theme. And that is basically, you don't like to necessarily judge people for where they're at, but you want to kind of be able to build people up and put them back kind of like together again, a fixer.
Oh my God, you said it perfect.
The reason why I can say that, I'm that way. I'm that way also. That's why I was in human service for as long as I was. We had drug treatment centers, we had shelters, and you could get in there. So a lot of social workers, nurses have a restorative type, doctors have a restorative type personality or strength. And so they're geared that way to kind of put you back to pieces. But what did I say too? Your strength can also be your weakness. That's emotional intelligence. Your strength can be your weakness. So what do you think can be the weakness of having that restorative strength that you have to be aware of?
Like sometimes whenever working in the social service field, like before I used to take things personally, whenever like I would be helping, and then they go around and do something totally different or a relapse or something like that. But I guess forgetting where they're at.
Yep. You hit the nail. And this is one of the things that I would recommend. There's another book called Boundaries that I recommend. It's called Boundaries by Henry Cloud. And I recommend that. And all these books that I reference is the things I had to learn in my own personal journey. Because, when I was being a minister and working in human services and trying to help out, you want to, get people right and get them right back in place. But the problem is that you might want to see that, but they have to come to that space themselves also. So why it's important, and the thing I learned in dealing with that restorative strength that's needed in this world is that you also have to put boundaries up. Because if you don't put boundaries up, that's when you're going to give out, and it's not going to be replenished back to you. Because the reason why you're restoring somebody is because they want to be restored. If they don't want to be restored in time, then you're going to be going through all this energy, and then you're going to get frustrated. One thing I learned when I dealt with drug treatment, there are individuals that had to go through drug treatment almost 3 or 4 times before it connected on the last time where I'm ready. Now, that doesn't stop us from being able to still reach out, but you have to set boundaries for yourself so that you don't give out until they're ready. Because if not, especially the personalities, and this is why understanding your personality, if you have a high D under disc, like a very dominant drive personality, under Myers-Briggs, it's type A. You go out and you're big driven. I'm out there, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get this. Well, what's happening is you're going out there trying to get this person, fix this person, and they're not ready for the stages that you're jumping them into. And so then you're going to be able to look back and say, they didn't want it. You're going to get frustrated. No, you didn't balance out to who you're dealing with. Remember, emotional intelligence is being able to get into the connection and seeing the person from their perspective, not how you feel they are. And so boundaries is a way of you setting some protections, not only for yourself, but for others. It's very important because, that was the one thing that was missing in my life for several years, just setting boundaries. And so I learn now in doing different things. And you might not be aware of it, but you see it in different ways in life. And it's important because if you don't set boundaries, you're going to give out. And you're going to get angry, frustrated, and things like that. And you're going to defeat the purpose of who you are. So it's boundaries are so important, whether you're in, family, parents and children, there needs to be boundaries. Employee, employer, there should be boundaries. In life, there needs to be boundaries, because if not, then once again, you're not going to have proper perspective in dealing with what you want to. So even though, restorative is a strong strength, but once again, LaShawn, you were getting to that point. And when we talk about what does it look like and what's the application of that, a restorative personality is good for individuals who to be able to express that. Social service, human services, nursing, the things, physical care, being and taking care of the elderly as an aid worker. Those are good strengths for those type of positions and jobs, because you are there to help people and get them back into the right space again. So you see how, understanding these strength insights will work with trying to guide you to purpose. I had someone, a couple years back that was talking to me and was asking, was like, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't want to move until I know what my purpose is. And that's why I came up with that kind of equation is, what do you want to do? What do you like doing? That's passion. What gets you up in the morning? People used to think I was crazy. I'm big into fitness and things like that because I understand. And I talk about that during Loving Myself series about nutrition and exercise and why that's important, how that helps with the body and replenishes the mind and keeps you connected. But people thought I was crazy getting up 4:30 in the morning and getting my workouts in and things like that. But that was what I needed to be able to fulfill the things that I need to do. And you will see that instead of worrying about, wow, I don't know what I should do in life, things like, you have passions and likes. Allow for that to be expressed. Volunteer, pick up hobbies in it, open yourself up. Allow that passion to be expressed, because that is going to point as a guide to purpose. And purpose is ultimately fulfillment of why you're here and what you want to do in life. And you will then learn the ability, power. Power gets you the ability. It might be a class. It might be a seminar. It might be sessions. That's power, getting the ability to carry out those things that's in you. A lot of the things that I do now are self-taught because I had passion for it. And then you go and expand upon that. When I wanted to deal with, I used to be active, but I hadn't been active for about 10 years. And I said, I need to get back at it. I hired a trainer to be able to help me with that. a coach, teachers, those different things are the parts of fulfilling the power part, the ability to do what's in you to do. It helps get that skill. And as you get more into it, you get more into it. And that's why I refer to my book, Kingdom Economics. You start out talking about thinking it's about money, but you understand it's about your life journey. And I was a businessman, trained to be a businessman, went to one of the best business schools and all those different things. And what I realized was that after all that business, it came down to, I was a CEO, I was running multiple companies. And here I am enjoying things much more than I was ever when I was a CEO, running my own business. I'm doing strategic business consulting for individuals. I have clients that want to expand and grow to the next level. So I utilize all my different strengths, and I'll talk about that and share that in order to fulfill what I'm doing now. But it was a 30-year journey going to different places. I did seminars over Africa, in Germany, and saw the response. I wrote that book when I went to Germany to be able to distribute it, and it sold out over there, within the first day of the sessions. And then I still have connections to people in Africa and Germany, back there. I'm working with someone who I stayed with in Germany and who's now here in the States that are a pastor running a church, but they're setting up a nonprofit for the homeless community in Las Vegas. So I'm working with them on that. So the things that I learned in business, I'm able to apply that to help and be restorative to people beyond where I'm at. And that's the beauty of it. And if I would have been, but I had to work over those years in dealing with that fear. Anyone that knows me would never think that I'm an introvert by personality type. Introvert is different than being shy. Introvert gets their energy from private settings. So that's why, like, when I go and work out at the gym, even though I had a trainer, I don't have a trainer now, and there's other guys at the gym, which hopefully I'll be able to get back to next month. I got my final shots coming for COVID. But I would work out by myself. Usually people come in, they have a workout partner, but I enjoy working out by myself. When I would travel for business, I would go to the restaurant, get a little table in the corner, and just enjoy just sitting there and eating my meal by myself. That was introvert. That means I was re-energizing myself, because that's where I draw my energy from. That's how I got to know myself. That doesn't mean that I don't want to be part of a group, but basically, and this goes back to understanding people. If you recognize someone that's an introvert, basically, because of their nature, they need to be invited in to a group. So if that's important, that's why emotional intelligence is so important, because if you're an introvert, you do want to participate in group activities. It's just that you're not necessarily going to volunteer. So people, when I was in a networking group, people started recognizing that. So they would say, hey, I went out to a leadership conference in Colorado Springs. It was beautiful. And we had high power people across the world. There was someone from New Zealand, someone from Germany, Australia. There are people across the world that was at this conference, this seminar. It was about 10 of us that we worked together. And there was a lieutenant general of the military that was pretty famous, who was there too. And we're all there, and we had to do activities. And one activity at the end was that I was chosen to be able to lead these group of high power people in a project. And here I am. I probably was like the youngest at the group. And these people were like world travelers. And they were in charge of big companies and international. And I remember And I remember why the facilitator chose me, because of my personality, they had all access to information. They knew I was an introvert, but they also knew that some of my strengths were as far as being strategic and all. So after they chose me and I went through and I laid out the plan and I got the lieutenant general to be able to be the coordinator of the project and things like that, and we got the project done. He told me afterwards, he says, when we were doing a little debriefing, he says, you did the right thing because you don't have to do everything, but you put the right people in the positions to carry out what they can do best. And what that showed me was, now, if I was not volunteered for that, I wouldn't have done that. And everyone else wouldn't have known what I was capable of doing. But because the facilitators were astute enough to know that, I wouldn't necessarily have volunteered, they went ahead and got me into that position. That's the same thing we have to do when we're working with ourselves and others, is recognize, don't see it through your own lens. Look at other people for who they are and get to know and connect. That's why these tests and things and these books I reference are important, because it gets you to be able to understand that we all have something to give. And if we get people into the right positions, you're going to see the fulfillment of the things in life, and it's going to be much better. So, that's an idea of when you're looking at how strengths work with your areas of weaknesses, and you got to be important and understand that. So if you see it as an area of weakness of a person, use emotional intelligence to flip it to see what is the strength that's the opposite strengths of that, because that's what that person possesses. And that from there, allow that person to walk in that. And it's the same thing with you. Walk in your strengths. Get to understand and don't be fearful. And you'll fine tune those things over time. Just to share with you, as I took this, and it makes so much more sense about what I'm doing in life now. My first top 5 is awareness. And awareness is people who are especially talented in the relator theme, enjoy close relationships with others. They find deep satisfaction in working hard with friends to achieve a goal. And that makes sense, because I like small groups and commitment to and getting connecting on those levels. Learner. People who are especially talented in the learning theme have a great desire to learn and want to continuously improve. In particular, the process of learning rather than the outcome excites them. That is so true. I used to get on the nerve of some people because I always would ask, why? Why? How come? Why didn't that work? Well, why is the world this way? Why did they say what they said? Why? And then people would respond to me, sometimes you're never going to get the answer to why. But I would always still say, well, why? Why? Why is my blood pressure going up? Why am I getting stressed out? Why? And so then that thirst for knowledge is always something for me. And now, once again, your strength is your weakness. Because of that, I have to be careful, because at nighttime, I got to be able to de-escalate myself. Else, I'll be processing my thoughts during the night, and it'd be hard for me to sleep. And for example, there was a time that I was only getting about 2 hours of sleep for almost 15 years. And that's what got me into understanding nutrition and working with therapists and things to understand these things. And so I had to change, some things I do. That's why I got into exercise. That's why I got into looking at brain exercises too. And that's why I also use technology, because one of the things I realize is that I'm a processor. That's my innate ability, is to process things, period. So if I see an issue or problem, I'm going to try to work it with life. I mean, I'm so frustrated about how they rolled out in Pennsylvania, this COVID. I'm looking at it, and I already have the solution, but here we are, and we're still months into this. And I'm like, they could just have done this, they could have done that, could have done this type of thing. But it goes well with me being a business strategist, because when I'm brought into dealing with clients, they're like, we're losing money here. I can go in and analyze and say, this is where you're losing. This is what you need to do. I want to start a business. I said, this is what you need to do. This is why for the business development, we're going to do a business plan, because most times people don't take the time out to plan out their business and know that it's going to struggle for a couple years. But if you plan it out, you can be prepared for that and survive that cliff of the 3-year cliff to get that business operating. So that's one of my strengths, is strategic planning and going through that process. But at the same time, that's also an area of weakness that can hurt me, because I can have my brain processing and it'll never shut off. So that's why I had to learn some things for food, nutrition, exercise to be able to do that. Now I average between 5 to 6 hours of sleep. And it took all this process to understand. That's why getting to know yourself is important. So, but learning is a key thing. I'm always inquired. I'm always wondering, why is this? How come this? How did this work? What's this? You know, what's going on? And and lack of fear enables you to be able to get out. And that's crucial, especially being an entrepreneur. If you're dealing with fear, and this goes back to personality. This is why I typically, when I take on a client, I'll go through a personality test, whether they take it or I have enough astuteness to be able to just ask certain questions to see where they slide into. Because if you are fearful of certain things, then you're not going to be able to take that risk to go out there and learn, take things new. So that means then I got to work with a different tactic to get you to a point so that you can eventually see what you want to get to. And typically individuals under DISC that have a high C type, characteristic that are conceptual, are really risk adverse. So there's a different way that you have to approach that person versus a D. You have to slow them down because they're just jumping off cliffs, and you're like, wait a minute, won't you look first? let's look first before we just jump into that. And you want to know why that's failing and all that. So that's why I understand personality is a little bit more important. My other strength is context. People who are especially talented in context theme enjoy thinking about the past. They understand the present by researching its history. Now, anyone that knows me knows that's me. I love history. I love history. Why? Because nothing's new. Human nature is not new. Human nature is human nature. I did a tweet out a couple weeks ago, and I posted it out there. You know, everyone's streaming now, especially with the pandemic. We're all streaming different things, and the movie theaters taking a big hit. All these streaming sites coming out, all these Disney Plus, and you got all of these Paramount coming out, and all these different things. And so, you know, there's a desire to say, okay, let's cut the cords. You know, let's cut the cords. You know, we don't need all those cable and things like that and TV. We can just stream. And I said, well, hold up a minute. I said, don't throw out your TVs just as yet, because when you look at things in life, okay, if I sit there wanting to look my programs, like there might be over 5 different streaming sites. And when you add up the cost of those 5 different streaming sites, it might amount to about $50, which is getting you back to a minimum level of cable. So what we're going to find out is that just because it's new doesn't mean it's new. And so I always caution people, you know, I love history because you can then model different things and then extrapolate it out to how it's going to go, which is good. But at the same time, you don't want to poo-poo new things. That's the weakness part. That's new. Yeah, it's going to be, you know, you don't want to sound like the old man, get off my lawn type thing. Or, oh, back in my day, we used to do that. But reality is human nature repeats itself. So it's not really new. It might be new to people, a new group of people, but at the same time, human nature will once again repeat itself, which is why it's important to understand yourself. The other part that's a strength to me is strategic. People who are especially talented in the strategic theme create alternative ways to proceed. Faced with given scenario, they can quickly spot the relevant patterns and issues. when I was the CEO of a company, I would always have plan A, B, and C of an issue, because you think if this A is what I want to happen, but if that doesn't happen, then I might have to go to B, and then if not, then C. I would go in. That's what I mean. My mind would always be thinking, because if something happened, I wanted to be able to go boom, 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 boom. So I would have to think about, and that prior to it happening. That's why that's why I like chess as a game, because you have to think not just what you're going to do, but what your opponent's going to do, and a couple moves down, back and forth. That's strategic. And that would get on the nerves of my team. I had like 12 directors, and because I was never in the moment. I was 5 years down the road saying, okay, if we do this, then this program, the funding's going to cut here. So we need to be able to increase our services here. So we need to start beefing up over here, those type of things. So strategic's important. But at the same time, the weakness of that is, once again, you're not in the moment. And that's part of the problem too, is even though you might be looking 5 years down the road, you're not being able to fill the issues of what people are dealing with now. And that's something you have to be able to be aware of. So, and then the last thing that was top 5 for me is responsibility. People who are especially talented in responsibility thing take psychological ownership of what they say, will, and do. They are committed to stable values such as honesty and loyalty. And Ernestine, you were dealing with that when you were talking about, the truth and all that. That was basically responsibility thing. If I give it to you, take it, responsibility, and do it. I shouldn't have to be over you and over that. So those are my top insights based upon the Strength Finders. But I hope that through this session, you could sit there and see, and identify what your strengths are. Go through that for yourselves, see how that applies to your life. And then those themes will also give you a focus point of what your purpose is. And if you're a person that doesn't enjoy sports and all that, you can't tell me that your purpose is to be, be the trainer for a NFL team. If you're going to be a trainer for an NFL team, they're going to be working out. You'll be working out for yourself. You'll be looking at studying. You might go for the power component, go to school, for physical fitness or, rehab or things like that, to be able to equip you a little bit better. But, I always say, go back to understanding who you are, because your passion of the drive that gets you to get up and do, and the ability for you to do and carry those things out that your passion is driving you to do, will lead you down the path of what you're supposed to do in life. And my thing is, enjoy the journey of that. Don't get stressed out and saying, I got to do this, and I don't want, and be paralyzed. There are a lot of things I've tried and failed over life. That Kingdom Economic Books that wasn't my first book I wrote. That's the first book I published. I want to do a second edition because that was done back in 2011. I have a different perspective now that I want to enhance, and my next thing is to do the workbook for that. I'm doing this first personal development series, this 9 series I did. I'm going to do a workbook for that. But I'm going to begin the business development, because once again, I like to build things and people. And as more people get what they need out of life, I think this world's going to be much better. And we'll have much more cooperation, more things and happiness that we can lay down for ourselves, for our family, and for others that we want to impact. So I'm going to ask, is there any questions that any might anybody might have. You can unmute yourself and open, this is get a few minutes open for questions. Well, if not, next month's session is when we're going to start the business development sessions. We're starting them. Once again, they'll be at 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. They're typically an hour session. April 10th is Saturday mornings. And I purposely have done this. This goes back to a boundary issue that I set for folks. If you're a budding entrepreneur, I will tell you, you will be working 7 days a week. That's just the reality. I work 7 days a week, whether it's working on your own business, working on clients, or whatever. However, you need to take time out for yourself to build yourself up. And that's why I try to do it on a Saturday at 10 o'clock so that you have a time, at least get a time to say, I'm going to work on my business so that I can be able to develop myself too. So we're going to start that. And the sessions are going to begin in April. We're starting a business. So I'm going to go over the advantages of starting your business. And it's important to understand that because a lot of people say, when you left a job, I left a job. Oh, how did you leave a job? I left a job and went straight into starting my own business. Usually you try to build up. And in my mind for 20 years, I said, I'm going to save up this amount of money. I had in my mind, I'm going to save up $250,000. I'm going to be able to launch out. That will help me out for 2 years. And then I'll be able to be okay. That didn't work out. I left a job, good pay, and started a business from scratch. And I've been at it for over 1.5 years now. And I have multiple clients I'm getting ready to hire on staff. And I want to talk about those different strategies that you can do to launch. It's not like you have to have all this money. But once again, over these 20 years, I had a plan, a strategic plan in mind that I developed, that I executed on. So there's different creative ways you can get working capital. We'll talk about that. So that's the first session. We're going to talk about the advantages of starting your own business. And when you look at a job that you might be possessing, it's not equal. It's not apples to apples. When you look at your job compared to looking at starting your own business as far as the same amount of income, because I'm paying myself a salary that's lower than what I was getting paid when I was working a job. However, when you look at the wealth income equivalents, I'm still making just as much because of the advantages of being in your own business. I have my own retirement plan. I have my own health insurance. I have the same things I had when I was working a job that I have for my own business. And I'm able to do at much peace and less headache and less stress. So there's the things that we're going to talk about, and then we're going to work that. And we actually are going to use actual real life example and take and develop a business plan over these areas of months, so that when you're all said and done, if you're working and doing assignments with yourselves, you will have a business plan in a 9-month period of time that you can launch and be a little bit more effective in operating and have a little bit more stronger foundation. So you can, once again, look at this. I can upload these videos so that you can go over it. I have videos of the personalities and things under Facebook. If you're interested, you can send me, go to my Facebook page at Visions 2020 LLC. And then I can invite you into the Love Myself First, which is a private group. So I have to admit you in. But in that, I have the videos, the curriculum that's out there. I'll be doing that again with the business development series and having that underneath. I'm also uploading videos under YouTube. And then you can reach me through all those different social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, basically at Visions 2020 LLC. So I hope you enjoyed the session. I hope you enjoyed the journey for this personal development. If you need to look at some of the previous sessions, they're out there under the Loving Myself First session out of Facebook and that group session. So once again, you can join the Facebook Visions 2020 LLC and then request a invite into the personal development series private group. But next month, I'm looking forward to actually then going in and starting and developing businesses. And I hope to have a lot of business entrepreneurs out there that are in the world, because that's what we need to continue to be able to help for just ourselves, our family, and just for the world. So thank you for taking the time out and sharing that time in your space with me. I know it's important and I appreciate that, and looking forward to seeing you next month as we look at developing our businesses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Send me an
Bye.
email or contact me if you want any further information.
Okay. That's good.